Welcome to Educate Us, a podcast and learning collective that explores the questions shaping education. Through conversations with educators, researchers, scholars, students, and community members, we examine the relationship between learning and lived experience. Together, we explore new possibilities for education and its role in the world around us. I am Dr. Tiffany Smith, educator, curriculum designer, researcher, founder, and host of Educate Us. Thank you for joining. Let's begin. We're excited to welcome you to episode 5 of the Educate Us podcast, Identity, Voice, and Student Agency. Over the past several weeks, we've been exploring what agency looks like in classrooms and communities. Most recently, Tamara Rodney reminded us that when students create something for a real audience, learning becomes part of the community, not just the classroom. Her words challenged us to think differently about what becomes possible when students have authentic opportunities to communicate and make meaning. Today, we're taking a step back to ask a more fundamental question: where does agency begin? To help us explore that question, I'm joined by Tracie McGhee, founder of the Empowernista and the I Define Me movement. I had the pleasure of meeting Tracie for the first time at the Damned Good People community building in the Grove neighborhood of St. Louis. If you've been following the Educate Us podcast, you may remember Damned Good People from episode 3, Designing Curriculum Around Community, where Sidney McGhee introduced us to the vision behind his organization and the community that it serves. Although Tracie and I had spoken by phone, we never met. We decided our first meeting would be at Damn Good People, and we also decided to record our very first conversation. What you're about to hear are a few moments from that initial discussion. And it's crazy because as I sit down to do this podcast with you, Tracie, I'm meeting you for the first time too. So they're meeting you and I'm meeting you for the first time. So this is really dope. But today we have Tracie McGhee. She is founder of the Empowernista and the I Define Me movement. Tracie, can you begin by introducing yourself and share a little bit about the work you do to support empowerment, leadership, and personal growth?
Well, first off, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be in this space. If you all could see this sister, she is truly laid back. And I don't know her any other way because this is how I met her and I'm loving it. The vibe is just amazing. Yes, I'm Tracie Berry McGhee, and some people call me the Empowernista. It was a name that I coined because I love coffee, and I felt that if I wasn't about empowerment, empowering women and girls and community, then I would probably be a barista. But I'm not. I do love coffee, but I'm an Empowernista. All things empowerment. Started the I Define Me movement for girls over 25 years ago. As a therapist, I just felt like wellness was important from every aspect. And most recently, I now have this issue, got this wellness collective. Can't wait to talk about that more. And that focuses on women. A poet, a writer, mother, wife, daughter, sister. Most importantly, I believe is being a sister to me. That part.
So one of the first ideas Tracie invited me to consider was identity. When we're asked to introduce ourselves, most of us begin with our roles: teacher, entrepreneur, mother, father, student. Those roles tell us something about what we do, but do they tell us who we are? As you'll hear, Tracie challenges us to separate who we are from what we do.
Well, for me, I think it's important that we don't buy into the roles.
I love that.
You know, when you define yourself, if you take away what I do, I mean, you are, you're not just Tiffany, you're Doctor. Right? Okay. Look, you earned it.
I still don't feel comfortable with people calling me that.
Well, you better, because you're going to be paying for it probably.
I like the way it looks in my signature.
Yes.
I can't lie.
Well, you earned it. That's the key piece is you earned it.
This is true.
And that's how important it is for us in the community that we earn the right to, as a friend, a sister friend, I earned the right to be able to talk to you, course correct each other, because we are able to, we have a relationship. So when you put that DR on there, it's because you did the work, and we respect that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to identity, I always say I define me, not society. And of course I work with girls and women, and society is always trying to define us. That's not acceptable.
So if self-awareness is the foundation of agency, then self-definition is one of its first expressions. But how do we begin to define ourselves? For many of us, the answer isn't found by looking inward first. It's found by recognizing all the ways we've been defined by other people. Listen as Tracie reflects on the messages she received growing up and how those experiences shaped her understanding of her own identity and self-definition, and why it's so important that students have the opportunity to define who they are before somebody else does.
So your work encourages young people to define themselves. Is that right? Rather than allowing others to define them. What does self-definition mean to you, and why is it so important for students?
I think it's important because when you're raised, you pick up learned behaviors, and you are taught the way to act, literally, by either observing others as a teaching model or practicing. And when you are in that space, it's based off of what you have seen versus you trying things out yourself. For instance, I remember growing up and people saying, you look just like your mama, or you look just like your daddy. But what about people who've never seen their daddy? And for me, I'm like, does that mean I look like a man if I look just like my daddy? And all of the mirrors were really tall. So I couldn't really look in the mirror and see myself and see all of me. So all I knew was based off of what other people told me. But once I started really trying to define myself, I had already dealt with people saying, Tracie, your lips so big you can scoop ice cream. You got soup coolers for lips. God. Look at you with your bald-headed self. All the things that people said about me that I didn't even get a chance to define myself. All I knew was what other people said. But once I grew up and was able to look in the mirror and truly look at myself and started writing in my journal, because, you know, I had that journal. Well, actually, it was called a diary with the little key. You know how you write in there, do not enter or you will die?
Absolutely.
And I'm writing in this journal all the things that people said about me. And that's why I love self-identity and self-worth. And it's like, when do I get to define myself? And that's when I realized that my identity cannot be defined by what other people said about me, especially when I didn't really care about those people anyway. But of course, there were some people I did care about, and those people didn't know how to love themselves, so therefore they projected that hate on me.
Absolutely.
But if I had not done the work or learned how to do the work to affirm myself, I would still be looking for them to validate me.
Yep.
And that's not self-identity.
Yep. It's hard to create boundaries. It really is.
As students begin defining who they are, a new question emerges. How do we help them hold on to that identity throughout the learning process? How do we teach writing, technology, and academic expectations without asking them to leave their authentic voice behind? In this next clip, Tracie and I explore what it means to preserve student agency throughout the learning process. We consider how writing and technology and feedback and even assessment can support learning without diminishing students' sense of voice and ownership.
So one of the things that was really important to me is that they have agency in that classroom. And so I started the class with them having that agency. We all started the class on the very first day of class in a circle.
Yes.
And so now we're looking at each other and we're having conversation. We're talking about things that matter to them. And so they came. They began to embody the work and everything. But the minute that I brought the technology piece into it and gradually intensified the work they had to do to express and use the technological tool, because ultimately that's what the class was measuring, their ability to write, their ability to explain how their attention shows up in the image, explain how their attention shows up in the video, to compile these modalities together into a composition and then publish that into a website. Like, that's real practical skill work, right? Like, once the skill work, the work in using the modality began to balance with the embodiment, I began to use it.
Yeah. I think that that's probably basic fear, and that's a past conditioning of what happened to them when they used those tools in the past versus you saying, look, bring your most authentic self, be as transparent as you can, write, don't worry about, just get it out first. And then we can shift it to make sure that we dot the I's, but let's just get it out. And I know with our girls, because a lot of our work was based off of poetry and not the poetry that people break down and say, oh no, I don't get this, but more of them being true to themselves. Just write. Let's see where you land. I don't care how you spell it. I'm not going to go back and check it for that right now, but just get it out.
Absolutely.
That's more for me. That was healing. But of course, anytime you add a grade to it, now it's a struggle.
Well, that's the other thing that I do, and that's part of this curriculum, is that the students grade their work. 50% of the grade is graded by them, and 50% of the grade is graded by me.
That.
And so they don't lose the agency when it comes to evaluation. Now, they do still, their ability to evaluate becomes questionable based on their understanding of what's being evaluated. That's a part of their total learning, though. Right? Because the evaluation is based on the learning objectives, and the learning objectives are mandated by the institution, by the...
So you got to have that quantitative data.
Absolutely. And so when we use and gather that quantitative data using a criteria sheet, they have to be able to make differentiations between what's right and what's wrong. And if they don't understand it, then they can't do it. But that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's all still a part of the learning.
Yeah.
But they don't lose that agency at that point.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it.
After students begin developing self-awareness and agency, the next question becomes, how do they learn to trust what they notice? One of the central practices in my curriculum is observation, not observation just to collect information, but observation as a way of learning to pay attention to ourselves. It begins with the places we're drawn to, the details we notice, the questions that begin to emerge. As Tracie and I explore the practice of observation, our conversation moves beyond the physical space and into a deeper exploration of self-awareness.
I even like doing it a second time so they have an opportunity they know what they're focused on coming in. We have an unpack session and then they do it a second time, but the second time they do what they can kind of do it more free flowing. They have a little more investment in the space at that point. It's not brand new. They've had a chance to be in it a little bit and then see what interests them or what they're guided to at that point. So the original curriculum it includes a microethnography component where students go out in the community and they go out wherever they want and they do 3 observations. And when they go to these sites, they just observe and pay attention to what they pay attention to. So they're learning, they don't know it, but they're learning how to engage their inner self and just see what they're guided to. They don't know that at first. At first, they want to describe everything in the room. And then gradually, with more practice, the second and the third time, they just sit back and they just pay attention. Just like even now, as we're sitting in this room, I find myself paying attention to this tall fern-looking tree here. It could be anything. Like, why am I not paying attention to the television, or why am I not looking direct at you, right? Or why am I not looking at the computer or the mic, or I can begin to question why I'm not looking at other things, but I'm very comfortable just sitting here looking at this green fern. And so from that insight of, I wonder what that's about, I can begin questioning why I was drawn to it, what it reminds me of, why it makes me feel a certain way.
It's like going to a gallery and everybody sees something different.
Yes.
And you walk up and everybody's just standing there. It's like, what do you see?
Yep.
I see a lady, and it's like, well, I see water.
Is that all in 100%? That's exactly it. And I don't want to say there's no rhyme or reason, because there really is. Because like you said, the more you get to know yourself, the more you will see those patterns showing up across.
Well, we always see reflections of ourselves.
Yes.
And the other piece to it is we're drawn to certain things unconsciously that we don't even realize. That, you might be a plant mama. And you're like, I'm just wondering what's got that, But I'm be honest with you, before you got here, I was drawn to those plants over there as around the fern. I was drawn to this one that looks like it was just kind of lifting up. For those of you listening, it looks like it's reaching out to the sky, but it also looks like that plant that closes in. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It has a very regal kind of, look to it. But then the next step would be for us to have a conversation about, why do you think we're drawn to that?
Yeah.
What's giving us comfort with
Yeah.
looking at that?
And if you could see it, the first thing that I see that connects me is the shadows. Now I'm looking at the shadow.
Okay, so see, I realize
Notice the ship will have a shadow.
that's so good.
I can
missed
see
that.
you, or is it not a shadow, but it's a reflection? That plant always gets to look at its reflection.
I love that.
And what are you reflecting?
Okay, so now you're impacting my focus.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that, because I actually wasn't focused on that, and I didn't even pay attention to it or see it. That's so good. And
That's how they learn.
it's like double the plant.
Yes.
But that's totally what I mean by how we bring this, embodiment into the work.
Our final moment from the first conversation brings us to the place where all of these ideas converge. Self-awareness leads to self-definition. Self-definition creates agency, and agency prepares us to engage with the world around us. But community doesn't simply happen because people occupy the same space. It grows through intention, shared purpose, a willingness to connect with others. As we close this first conversation, listen to how Tracie describes community, not as a destination, but as a practice.
Let me ask you, so community? How do you create that in your work?
For me, it's like I keep saying, creating a safe space.
So, but I mean, like, how do you connect? Are you connecting with other communities? Or yes, are you, how about allowing them to engage with community at all?
Having a nonprofit, we have chapters locally, nationally, and globally. That's a model for me. Start at home, and then we blend out.
Yeah.
And I like personally, I like meeting people who started something out of nothing because I know that that person has been thinking about it. They think about it all the time, you know. And then when we get together, they're very clear on what it is that they want to do. And so I like to see, and I even ask the girls, like, what's your vision and what's your mission? And then what's that mission statement? Because then you can stand on it. And that's how you grow. Um, so finding other nonprofits that are in alignment with me is important.
How do you do this? How do you find this?
I think just from, I mean, now we have an opportunity to be online. We know algorithms don't lie. So the things that you put in are important. And that's what digital literacy is for our youth. Being able to walk out in the community. Like right now, we hear dogs barking. If you do you want to be in a community where there are animals and things like that, of course. Because then that means that people are walking
Yeah.
and they're talking. So being okay with being outside and walking and talking and saying hi. The type of foods that you want to eat. Are you one of those people that tired of fast food? But being able to always be okay with eating out alone, but also meeting up with complete strangers and saying, hey, can I sit here? And practicing that. So even with the women that I work with, I'm like, y'all, we're gonna all go out and we're gonna ask for a table for one. We all be in the same space.
Yeah.
But to be like, I see you, I see different. But at the same time, somebody's gonna need to sit next to you.
The ideas you've heard throughout this conversation have been foundational to the multimodal composition curriculum I'm developing. Communication begins with self-awareness. Students need opportunities to make meaning from their own experiences. They need agency to communicate with intention. A few weeks after our initial conversation, Tracie and I met again to continue this dialogue. In part 2 of our conversation, we take a deeper dive into identity, voice, and real-world agency. We explore how self-awareness shapes the choices we make, the relationships we build, and the ways we engage with our communities. More importantly, we consider why these experiences matter as we prepare students to communicate with confidence, purpose, and authenticity. Let's begin.
And I said, what if everybody talks about this covenant that you take in your relationships? What if we had taken that covenant to ourselves in the very beginning? Like, what if there was this grand, like when you walk into the church and they have this covenant that women needed to take, or young girls, part of your rites of passage is taking this covenant to self. So then there's no pressure. Like that covenant to self is first. I mean, if you want to take that ring off and say, okay, I think I want to make this covenant to someone else, but no one said you should make this covenant to yourself first. And that's one of the things that I honestly like to talk to our young girls about, is how important it is to have agency when it comes to self.
That is a great segue. That's an extremely good segue. So here's the thing about the meeting we had that was so amazing, is that we got to actually feel each other's energy in person is so different from what I'm feeling right now. Like I can see you and kind of feel you, but when I was sitting next to you, that's a different level of intimacy. I'm so glad that we had those moments. I'm going to be honest, like, I don't know, and I say honest, like as if I would be dishonest. I think omission could also be considered dishonest, but I don't know how I'm going to use part 1 yet. So when our listeners listen to part 2, understand that one of the things that's happening with this podcast is that it's happening very organically. God has placed many people in my life to have these conversations. I'm not questioning who, I'm being obedient, and I'm moving with this currency, this flow that's happening, right? So I'm not sure why it was important that the recording be disrupted in the way it was. Maybe there's something God doesn't want me to share with you. Like, I don't know how I'm going to reveal it, if I'll do a big segment. We'll see. So if you've already listened to part 1, you already know what it is, but we're on part 2 and we're doing part 2 before part 1. So one of the things that I want to do before we get into this conversation today, because we're getting ready to use our self-awareness to have those very grounded conversations about what you do. So while the first time we met, it was more about, who are you? Who am I? I'm Tiffany, and you're, and all this. And it was wonderful, but we talked about, anyway, I won't say, you got to listen to part 1. But we're getting ready to get into the mission that you're on, so that people can hear how your self-awareness is showing up in the work that you do. But we're going to talk in very concrete ways. So before we get into this concrete material world, I want to start by, let's do a check-in.
Okay.
How you feeling this morning? Like, when we wake up in the morning, this is our present moment. Like, how do you feel right now? Like, how do you feel? Just
Yeah.
how do you feel?
You are absolutely right about when you meet with someone face to face and you can feel the energy and the spirit. And I was looking forward to today. I was like, oh, it was like being with a good friend that you get to catch up with again. I was like, oh, round 2. And I mean, you're right. Part 1 was great, and it's like we just had to connect again. It's just the
Yeah.
universe was saying, come to me.
More.
And so I feel good. I do. I have my turmeric tea. I normally drink coffee, and that's something that's shifting for me that a lot of people don't know, but or I'm coming back to. And that's a conversation to have that is kind of like an exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I feel good too. I will say that the day started with I wasn't vibrating as low as it can go, but it wasn't as high as I feel right now.
Mm.
I was rushed. I really could have used more sleep. I was annoyed by that. It generated some frustration. And this is the thing I learned about how you feel, like, and what happens in the material world as we separate these two things a little more, just, for a minute, is that how you feel and what's real.
Yeah.
So while there's two things happening, though, it's always dual nature. So while I'm interacting with people in the ways that I've been taught physically to engage with people inside my body, I'm frustrated, I'm tired, I'm doing things to force my body to be awake instead of allowing myself the time to rest, which I will do. But here's what God did. He said, clean your space. I wanted to take a shower. Like, I wanted to get in the shower. He said, clean your space. I spray my floor with water and alcohol mixture. 1 part alcohol, 3 part water. And I just went through and cleaned the space, open the windows, open the door. I'm smelling heart chakra right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all of that is,
That's good. That's good
what I
stuff.
wanted to bring. That's the thing though. It showed up in my life as my mom saying, our house is a mess until we have company.
Mm.
But if you flip that to a positive, it shows up as I don't show up in other people's lives in low vibration. So I wanted to shift my energy so that we can, so I feel good right now. I'm drinking tea too, lemon. Look, I'm trying to make time for this.
Yes.
It's happening. I write as I read,
I love that.
It's really about recentering myself and being present with you, and I wanted to be present with you, and so I'm present with you.
Yeah. And then everybody else gets to listen in. We share.
All right. So for those who may be hearing about the Empowernista for the first time, what is it? What does it mean to you today?
So, when you're growing up and you are trying to define yourself and you have all these different names that people call you and names that you choose to go by, and you might write all the names down. I mean, I remember when the movie Sparkles came out, I was like, oh, I'm going to be Sparkles, and all of the different names. As a poet, and I think a writer first, I've been writing my whole life. I think that's a huge educational piece when it comes to identity and voice and agency. And I always wanted to like coin a name for myself, right? So to speak. And when I first started doing poetry as a therapist, my name was Divine T, because I would come in and I would drink my tea when I would write. And I also felt like it had two meanings, like divine tea and divinity. And I felt like I was a mixture between the two, because I wanted people to see that although I know that God leads me, I'm a whole woman. So there's parts of me that you may not get, and that's fine. And I think that's the divine tea side of me, trying to be as close to divinity as possible, but oftentimes falling short. So divine tea became like this poetry name for me in sipping. As I used to say that my poetry was for the young and the old, like sip and sip it slowly. And then as I began to evolve, most recently during the pandemic, I lost my mother and my father. And my mom had this affinity towards coffee. Now I'm the tea girl, but I desired that connection because she was gone. And I knew that there was this spiritual connection with all of us. My grandmother would drink coffee. Like coffee and tea is all about conversation. Okay, let's sit, drop some tea, sip some tea, let's have some coffee, all the things, right? And so I started having this strong affinity towards coffee because T, I called you T, Tiffany, Dr. Smith.
It's growing
Um,
on me. Yes, ma'am.
yes, wear it well, wear it well. Um, my mom used to tell me, Tracie, you can't drink coffee till you get grown. Okay. And my whole life, my mom called me little girl. Even in my 50s, I was always, hey, little girl, because you're always your daughter's, your mother's child, I guess. And so the coffee thing, was drinking it, but I wasn't drinking it. So when she passed away, I started drinking it even more. And I thought I was grown. So I drank it black, no sugar, no cream. And I started loving the smell of coffee and connecting to her with the coffee. We would sit on the phone and drink coffee and talk during her first cup. And because I empower women all the time, And I love coffee. I thought, man, I should be a barista. But because I'm not a barista, I'm an Empowernista. So
Mm.
I put the two together because I'm a sister. So sister, Empowernista,
Hmm.
barista, it all comes together. So just like coffee, like wakes you up and keeps you strong, that's what I do as an Empowernista.
Hmm.
And it's an evolution of me having a nonprofit over 25 years ago for girls called Sister Keeper, and now working with women, focusing on wellness, letting them know that sis, you got this. So thus the Empowerista.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
I
What an
can't make a long
amazing
story short.
story. What an amazing story. I normally, I don't know. And typically when I'm doing these, I don't take notes, but I was inspired to take notes when you were speaking. And one of the things that I'm introducing with this podcast and with the pedagogy that I'm sharing with the world is this duality that we all have. The naming of yourself is a direct representation of your duality. So, divine is tapping into your inner self, your creativity, your imagination, your visions, your essence beyond your body. And the T taps into your physical.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's kind of amazing. You seem like you grew up in a community of women. That's a blessing.
I did. I
With
did.
women who were having conversations about women things.
Ooh, baby. Sometimes things that I probably wasn't even prepared to hear,
Uh-huh.
but felt the circle was definitely necessary. You know, when kids start listening and they're not talking a lot because they're taking it all in, and you're like, you ain't hearing me though. And they just sitting like, I don't have a lot to say because this is some good tea. And I don't want to say too
Mm.
much and y'all make me leave the room. But being raised by a single mom, a teen mom, around other women trying to figure out life, that became the village. And my
Mm-hmm.
mom taught me to be there for other women, which made me realize the value when it came to girls.
Mm-hmm.
Because oftentimes I come across girls who say, I don't do girls, other
Mm-hmm.
girls, and you're a girl. I come across women who say, I don't mess around with women because women can be messy. And I'm like,
Self-hate. It's self-hate too, though. It's
yes.
self-hate. It's
And so,
self-hate. Mm.
yes. So I'm like, well,
That's
sis,
deep.
what women are you messing with?
What about
Because
what or what about your own woman?
the
Your own
woman
woman.
inside of you,
Do you mess with
yes.
her? Do you mess with her?
Mess with her, because then you're going to go deeper and realize that some of the things that you're experiencing are definitely internal.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And what you experience physically is a manifestation of that.
Hmm.
And that's, I'm when I got to Morris College in January of 2025, I was very grounded in that duality. I was working with students who were coming from very low income and impoverished areas. This opportunity was their way out of that.
Hmm.
So I implemented the curriculum in a way that forced them to objectify poverty and to objectify race. Because in objectifying those things, they began to separate from those things.
That's good.
And and then what God put me through, I achieved. By the time the end of the semester came, they had complete democratic power in my classroom, all the way down to how I administered my final exam. And I imagine that they're at Morris doing great things. But the next test for me was to experience what I had taught them.
Ooh.
I had been delivered from Atlanta. I had been delivered from Atlanta. when I left Atlanta October 2024, I really didn't have to go back. Even though my doctoral work wasn't complete, I really didn't have to go back. I could have continued going forward. And that's another lesson that I'm learning, this constant lesson about going back, going back, going back, going back. I want to go back, go back, go back, go back. I want to go back home. I want to go back. And so what happens when you feel like you need to go back, that means you need to go back to what the experience was in that space. Not going back to some nostalgia that you've created for yourself. No, you're going back to that lesson. You're going back to that time. You're going back to that space. And baby, when I got to Atlanta in August 2025, woo-wee, woo-wee is all I'm going to say. But I'm so grateful that I can now objectify that. And now it's time to move forward. And what that looks like, only God knows. What an amazing womb Empowernista is growing out of. I didn't grow up that way. I didn't grow up everybody was very private. Communication about real world things were reserved for adult conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was about performance. And so that became how I started my journey in the world, performing from a young age, both literally and physically.
It's interesting that you say that, because there's a difference between performative versus being. And I have to say that the village that I experienced from the outside looking in, for some people, be like, wow, that was beautiful. But the being of my village, they were toxic, Like I said, they were learning to be women. So I seen and heard and experienced some things that a little girl probably should not have seen.
Mm-hmm.
But it made me the woman I am today. So I can't take away from that. And oftentimes, many times, my mom apologized for it. And I'm a much better person for it. So I kept telling her, like, it's okay. Like, I get it. I mean, I growed up fast because of the experiences of seeing women go through all the time. We have a group here at my office because, I'm a licensed therapist, and we call it Woman-ish. And the ish is the independent sisterhood, because oftentimes as women, we go through it by ourselves, and how important it is for us to grow through it together. And so what I witnessed was a village of women going through more than growing through. And oftentimes when you go through, you get stuck. And so what I've received from that was how to keep growing. And so that kind of puts you in a lonely space, because eventually you outgrow the people that you're around. And if they don't choose to grow with you, you got to leave them. And that's what hurt the most. There are a lot of people in my space that I grew up around, family and friends, that I had to let go of.
And I even find myself trying to hold on to those relationships, even though I know in a lot of cases, if I were to let go, then it would be what it is. So that's interesting. That's very interesting. Let me ask you, when you look at the young people that you worked with, what changes have you seen? And how can you tell the difference? How do you know the difference?
Well, I know that when I started programming and that I did, my children were a lot younger. My daughters, I have two daughters who are very different. One's 35 and one's 30. And I think that the demographic of parents were very intentional about giving them a voice and making sure that they were able to explore themselves and the space and travel and do all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And now I feel like some of the young people that, and I'm talking about like elementary, middle, high school,
Mm-hmm.
not college. These young people, they're lacking values and boundaries and discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And those three things are the things that when I first started working in this space with our young people, their parents had it. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you had it either because someone gave it to you or you were so very interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
But today, we're so used to looking at people in other spaces and modeling systems that really shouldn't be have anything to do with us. And our kids are getting caught up in it. So
Got
they
it.
don't have those values, those boundaries, or the
But
discipline.
the parents can only give what they have in those moments, and I do try to remind myself of that, especially as I give myself grace for what I have in certain moments and how I showed. I may have shown up in a moment in a way that isn't really representative of myself because maybe I was in pain or didn't have the immediate self-discipline to step away from the situation long enough to give God the room to, that requires a calmness and a constant engagement with that flow, especially for me because I'm high level intellect. So my brain is stupid fast. I mean, and constant. And it'll overpower my flow with thoughts about and processing and analyzing and what could be and maybe it's this and what about that and let me think about this and you have to step out of it. One of the things I do to step out of it is I remind myself that when I come out of it, that's where the real power is. It's not in the thinking. The thinking actually reduces my ability to produce the desired result. You can't think bigger than God. You cannot think bigger than God. But let me ask you, so when you're
let me see. The thing about you is you were able to explain it. So if you're able to explain it, the areas that we may lack in, we're able to say, hey, you know what? I wasn't the best in this area. And I want to work on that. So then there leaves room for the door to be open for change.
For sure. When you're in the thick of it, when the emotions are overwhelming, when situations are shifting and they may not be moving in the direction that you want them to, it's hard to center yourself. I think that's what your organization probably does well, is that you help people to recenter themselves, to come out of that mental loop that they're having or the limiting thoughts they're having about what reality they can participate in. It's interesting to drive through St. Louis and see everybody's reality. Because where you choose to live, that's the reality that you've created for yourself. I always said, I'll have a brownstone in New York, right? And the other day I was walking up my front steps to my apartment here in University City, and this is a replica of that. I didn't even realize it. I did not even realize it. That was not my intention on getting this apartment. My son picked this apartment. The fact that I'm still living here after he has gone and used it for what he needed it for, there's still this connection with, and literally my steps are stoop, door.
It's interesting you say that because I'm so St. Louis. I love St. Louis, or I'm sure a lot of people say they have this love-hate thing when it comes to St. Louis, especially when you travel, and especially the current climate because we're struggling a lot. Um, so when you meet people and they say, "Where are you from?" Just this past week, "Where are you
Mm-hmm.
from?" And
Yes.
it used to be that I would meet people and I'm like, "I'm from St. Louis," and they go, oh my God, is it really that bad?" And I'm like, "Actually, it's not." And now people are like, "Oh my God, you're from St. Louis." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." But this time when I said that, 3 times last week, there was a cab driver and I said, from St. Louis. He was like, "Oh." And he was like, my father and my mother lived in Lake St. Louis, and he had a story to tell. And then I was in a restaurant and like, "Where are you from?" I'm like, "St. Louis." "Oh, my brother lived in Florissant." "Oh." And then another lady, "Oh, my family lived, I went to St. Louis, blah, blah." And I realized that St. Louis, it is a big, small town, but wherever you come from or whatever it is that you visualize, even if I say, "Oh, I love like Savannah's my happy place," maybe, the brownstone in New York is your happy place, or wherever it is that you are, that's the point. Wherever you are, you're going to take it with you. And so even
Yeah.
that energy, I found goodness from people from my city.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's like home. You can't talk negative about my city. And I have to tell people, everywhere you go, everybody got some stuff. But it's still my home. It's still something about coming across the bridge and seeing the arch and
100%.
the knowing the streets.
Yes.
I know the
And the
street.
and the frustration that I don't know the streets, a lot of them the way I used to. Let me tell you this. When I left St. Louis in 2020, 2014 to go to Atlanta, people did not expect me to come back.
Did you expect you to come back?
To the point where they would ask me why I was coming back. And every single solitary time I would come here and be here any extended period, they want to know, "Are you back? Are you back? Are you back?" I couldn't figure it out for the life of me. Like, why? What is this thing associated with leaving and coming back? It's almost like people expected me to abandon home. Listen, I was 2 years old the first time my mom put me on an airplane by myself to travel between St. Louis and Atlanta. I've been traveling I lived in Atlanta for 4 years of my life, many plane rides, to the point where I finally started to remember them and have experiences associated with them. My grandparents picking me up, the rides back home through the city, my uncle coming to the airport in his full-on Sherlock Holmes boot, just, and back then they could come all the way to the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So me getting escorted by the flight attendant off, as soon as I walk off the plane, my family was right there. I had no intentions ever of abandoning St. Louis. My family is here. My son is here. Even when my son and I were at the height of a necessary separation so that he could get closer to his manhood.
Right, right. I hear you.
And I was in a position where I had to decide, was it Atlanta or St. Louis? I could not let it go. It's my root. It's where I come for the most purest love that I can get on the planet. The people in St. Louis have known me my entire life, some of them. My closest friends, I've known them since I was middle school. They know my core. They don't know Dr. Smith. Nobody knows Dr. Smith. I'm getting to know Dr. Smith. You understand? They know the essence of me, and that's what they love, and that's what they're going to remember when I'm outside of this body. So it's a double-edged sword because it saddens me to see our people in poverty mindset. It saddens me when when our people won't, when they operate in cliques and won't cross germinate and share and love each other and support each other. When you see each other in public, I wonder why we always had the mean mug. Like that was a thing, the mean mug, because literally we're going out into society with our face angry. Do you know, I realized and found out that if you find your face in an angry position, then God is not in control in that moment. You're not even operating. You're not even operating from divine. And I won't get into what else might be controlling you, spirits and on and off bodies, and because then now we're getting into
Did you think that was just a St. Louis thing? Because there's a lot of St. Louis things.
It's grounded in, yes, let's talk about a St. Louis thing. It's grounded in the history and the culture and the commencement of the activities that came across that Mississippi River and started on that bank. And now we're getting into a whole other thing. So it's understandable. Slave mentality, where the quarters exist within the infrastructure. Quarters means you're not owning. You don't own anything. If you don't own the space that you participate on, then you're still existing. Then you become a slave to what it requires to keep what you don't own. And when the tornado comes through and tears down my property, now you want me to find you something to own. You don't own this space. I own this space. I decide whether I want to rebuild or reinvest in property that's in a decaying area. They're giving me thousands of dollars because of whatever my land is worth. My insurance company is paying me out, and I put this money back into a property so you can have, at this point, you can't afford to live here. So it hurts me. It's difficult to drive around and see that and experience that, and show up for people, and they're not used to it because you're not in my clique. You don't know me. I mean, who are you? What? Listen.
And it's an intergenerational, like it didn't just impact babies.
It's classic divide and conquer. It's classic divide and conquer. People don't understand why I have people in my life from all walks of life.
Right.
It's a little risky sometimes, because if you start engaging in other people's reality, then you will become that reality. So it's risky. It's risky. And I've crossed that line before. I've been in love with someone who was living in a different reality. And it was kind of amazing because I was literally living in Atlanta at the time. God was pushing me forward. I had contracts in New York. Like, God was pushing me forward. And what was I doing? Going back. And when my reality would show up, he would have to shift to become. So he's performing to participate in my reality because I was not participating in his reality.
That's true.
And until he decided that he didn't want to shift anymore. It was too difficult for him to shift. So his reality started bleeding into my reality, and then my life became.
Hell, you see how it goes both ways. It goes both ways. Sometimes we feel like I'm going to pull people out. Like, okay, I understand the Harriet mentality. I'm all here for it, but don't think they can't pull you back. And it becomes so easy because that thin line of you've already been, you know what dysfunction looks like and feels like. You've been there. And so that piece is more of a norm to you than dysfunction. So the longer that you're in it, the longer you're in mess, you don't smell it. you like, you can't even smell it no more. And then you look up and you're like, oh, I'm sitting in a whole lot of mess.
What you be is what will come.
Okay.
So I be a scholar, educator,
That
a
part.
teacher,
That's part.
that's what I be, and that's what is, and that's what will come.
Yes.
So let me let me ask you this.
Snaps all over the place.
Oh no, this is what they do now. Look, we gotta
Clock
stay here.
it.
When you stop growing, look, I need my
Right.
long nails. Look, let me
Right.
get mine. I need my long nails together to, clock it like that. So get us into the practical work that you do. I want to see you in a workshop. I want to see their faces. Take me to a moment.
Well, with girls, I do girl assemblies. I work with school districts and I do community circles and church youth organizations, and I empower girls to define themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I let them know I define me, not society.
Mm-hmm.
And I want them to see all of who they are when it comes to when you look in the mirror, who do you see? Like who affirms you? Because you should affirm you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to women, I'm like at the core individually, I'm a therapist, but I also do wellness weekends. I do wellness retreats.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that focuses on women and girls, that's my sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of it is intervention, but I kind of got burned out from that, honestly. Like I said, when the pandemic happened, losing my parents, I stopped practicing. I literally stopped practicing.
Mm-hmm.
And just like everybody else being in a box, I started being on social media more, just really having to what I call fill up my cup, drinking my coffee, but also pouring into others, asking you, is your coffee, what's in your cup? Is it strong or what? Dropping affirmations. And then I realized that the things that I have been telling everybody to do, that Tracie needed to show up and do those things for herself. And I was going to live out loud and show people what it looked like. Because I didn't want to, I really preferred wellness versus intervention. I think the preventive model works best because number one, it's less expensive. When she started paying for therapy, baby, it can get costly. And you're going to pay the cost if you don't take care of yourself. So if we can start looking at it from a wellness perspective of like, what are you doing, Tiffany, every single day to pour into your cup? And I'm not talking about nails, hair, did all of those things. Like literally, what are you consciously doing to invest in yourself?
Well, that's where the duality is showing up again, because when you focus on, first of all, intervene means I'm intervening with what God is doing. Okay. That's already leaning into something, right? But the duality is between, do I focus on my body or do I focus on my spirit? Because when you start talking about wellness, you're talking about being. And you start talking about moving out of that intervention phase and getting into what you're getting into is the flow. When you start getting into flow, you start getting into energy, you start getting into soul, you start getting into spirit, you start, so you shift from intervening with what the body is responding to. The body is responding to what's happening inside.
Oh, yeah, we're very psychosomatic. So all of those things are going to impact us. But that's why I feel like when I'm like, I'm a whole woman, I have to look at the mental, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, the financial, the environmental. I have to look at all of those things because all of those things impact me. I remember there was a time when the girls would say, because I'm a whole woman, or I'm about to have a whole baby. Well, nobody has a half a baby. So really, what does that look like for you?
I love that.
Look at all aspects of my life because all of those aspects impact me. Sure, I love God. I'm a God girl. I'm a faith walker. I tell everybody, that literally I heard God tell me when I stopped working for everyone else and working for myself over 25 years ago. I heard God say, when I tell you to walk, run like the wind, for you are guaranteed to fly.
Mm.
And if I want to add in
I
being a
needed that.
Pisces, because I'm this sensitive Pisces, I got to keep swimming because
Yeah.
I'm going to swim. I'm going to swim. I'm going to go
Yes.
deep. And I
I
don't
love
even
all
know.
of these
I'm going to leap.
analogies.
You know, all of that. I'm going to jump in the water. I'm
Ma'am.
going to fly. I'm not going to think first. I'm going to fly and I'm going to allow God to lead me. But I know I got the tools because I did the work. So part of that is I still got to have a faith walk because I don't know where I'm going, but I prepared myself. And like you said, ain't nobody else going to take care of me. Like I'm going to take care of me. That part.
So what does that look like in the moment with those girls? Like, how do you know that they're making that transformation?
You know, oftentimes educators got to realize it's not an overnight thing. And typically it may get worse before it gets better because we're going from a space of learned behaviors. Like you know how long it took me to love my hair and love my lips and love all the things about my body because of what somebody else said about me or to me that I thought was the truth. So we're getting girls in a middle school stage of their life where they're trying to define who am I at the core because of what other people have said about them. And I'm like, no. This is not the time to put labels on yourself. But this is definitely a time to pull out that journal and start exploring it. And not tearing out the pages and ripping them up, but also being able to go back and see your growth. And so it looks like them having a voice and listening to each other and realizing that, guess what? We got more in common than different. And I'm supposed to grow. Oh, you mean that I don't have to be in the same circle of girls that I started out with? No, move around. It's okay. I don't know if I want to fly. Okay, how about getting on a train?
Yeah.
Once you get to Japan, you're gonna be riding trains. It's gonna be the same thing. So it's just getting out of your comfort zone, teaching them to be comfortable being uncomfortable for real.
Let me tell you how that exact situation showed up in my class, where one of my students got out of their comfort zone so they could stay in the space. So it was that important to them that they be able to come to my class, and they wanted to fully participate in what I was engaging them with in my class. And I was engaging them with a lot of digital literacy, I mean, we were YouTube, we were Google Docs, we were Google Slides, we were creating, because at that time I was using Google. Now I've transitioned using Microsoft, but we were doing so many different things with the computer. We were sharing files, a lot of things that we're doing now. We were doing that, and they wanted so badly to participate in what I was engaging them with that they brought a stolen laptop to my class. And I know it was stolen because when they opened it, the siren went off.
Oh, wow.
I looked over at him, I said, because what I did in that semester is I allowed them, it was two young men. Unfortunately, they were, I won't even say, but it was two young men, and I allowed them to show up. I allowed them to have space within that space. I allowed them to embody it. I allowed them to own it. I allowed them to feel connected with it. And I allowed them to come where they were. Yes, they failed the class. They, according to the institution, they got an F, because at the institutional level, I'm measuring cognitive development, and I'm looking for some specific behaviors that you need to exhibit that indicate that you have achieved such cognitive development, right? And so without the multimodal piece, without the digital literacy piece, without your ability to navigate these tools in the way that our world that we have manifested as a collective has ordained. You want a job, you got to be able to get online. What does that mean? Get online. You got to get online. You got to go to another world that's being created by another world, but not the real world, to do work. Okay. So I allowed them the space. How did I do it? Simple. So simple. Every single class session, I showed up. I moved with the flow. With how they need, what they need, because I know the objectives. I'm the professional. I know exactly what the behaviors are. I know what I'm looking for. I know what the objectives are. I've achieved the objectives. That's why I'm in front of you. But instead of me forcing the objectives on you, teach me how to write, okay? Instead of forcing the objectives on you, I'm allowing you to take rhetorical agency within that space. And how do I do it? I just show up myself. I show up authentically. I don't play roles. They get democratic input all the way down to the final assessment. I don't show up with that energy that requires them to perform. At the end of the day, I do need to evaluate your work. But I don't ever get to evaluate your being.
Ooh, yeah. Hey, I'm writing notes too. Everybody else should be having their notepad. The showing up piece is huge. The building relationship piece is game changer. And then also being able to shift the way that our youth learn. I had all of my curriculum is now online in portals, so that if school wanted to do their work online, one-on-one, a mother and a daughter, if they wanted to do it in an alternative school setting, if they wanted to do it when school was out, they have the ability to do that. But the other piece to that, which is more important to me than anything, is it culturally relevant? Is it going to keep their attention? Because we got to be honest, the average kid or adult, their attention is shorter than a TikTok. I gotta feel it through the screen.
Yep. But that's where that ownership comes in again, because the more I allow them to own, it shifts from them, it takes me out of a space of manipulation. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm trying to help you to see how what I'm reinforcing here shows up in the real world.
Yeah.
In the real world. Not this world that you've created for yourself where, and it's, one of the things that was so interesting to me when I was at Kennesaw last fall was there's a Chick-fil-A on campus. There's a Moe's, Southwest Moe's or whatever on campus. There's the one with the Chinese kind of food, Asian,
or something
like that. Yeah, on campus. So,
Panda Express.
All these things are like in this quad together. And I was walking through the campus one day and I said, this is the reality that they are normalizing them.
Yeah, they are.
Do you understand? Based on this is normal. I don't think it's an intention to harm. I think it's based on what's normal for them. This is what we normally do. We go to Chick-fil-A until you hear that, Chick-fil-A may be using modified
something.
So, and I get my waffle fries on a regular, be clear. But it's a normalization because, as we said just a minute ago, when you go through St. Louis, you see everybody's
deserts and everything.
reality. Their
Yes.
reality. Their
Oh my
reality.
goodness.
Their
Let me tell you.
reality.
And it is a shift. And if you've never experienced the shift, you think that's all there is.
Mhm.
You know, I remember the first time I went to Atlanta's marketplace with all of the different,
Ponce?
I'm like, I can get this fresh food like this all the time
Oh,
from
wait, are you
all
talking
these
about the
different
farmer's market
countries.
or Ponce? I think you're talking about Ponce.
It's indoors and
It's
you walk
indoors and
down.
outdoors.
Yeah.
And there's stores on the outside too that are more commercial-ish. But once you get in, it kind of reminds me of the City Foundry.
Baby.
Is that
Yes.
what you're talking about?
It was a marketplace with all fresh fruit, fresh food, fresh groceries, fresh fish, fresh meat, everything. But from all these different countries. And if you want this type of tomato or this type of lettuce or this type of fish, we don't have that as an option here to even try to eat healthy.
I don't think you're talking about Ponce, but yeah, there's a lot of farmers markets that I know of in Atlanta, and I get that.
Well, and then even the other side to it when it comes from a entrepreneur perspective. Like you have all of these, like you said, outdoor marketplaces that I can shop with my own people and get all the things that I need. And I don't even have to go across the street to the strip mall or
It's a cultural difference.
Yeah.
It's a cultural difference. I mean, you know, that's just plainly it. It's a cultural difference. I think that for some people, their quote unquote way of life is their way of life. This is where I was raised. This is, you know, my mama, she had a baby at 14. Like, not on me, my mom did. I mean, this culture of this is, you know, how we operate. This is where we operate. You know, I was at a friend's house that I went to high school with some years back, and he lived on the north side on one of those streets where there's abandoned lots and there's buildings across the street that are boarded up and things like that. And then he's got his house there that just kind of sits in the middle of this
desolate place.
You know, and it's like, how does that become your reality? Like, that's the space that you see yourself in and day out. Where is even the source of life around?
You know, from an educational perspective, I was going to a school that was in a space like that, and walking into the school, there's bars on the windows.
Seriously.
You got to go through you got to go through security to get in. And some of the windows are boarded up. And the kids told me it was nothing to see a shooting on the playground or a dead body. What do you mean? Like, when's the first time? And that was their questions. When's the first time you saw a dead body? Like, were you serious? And it was the norm. It was the norm.
It was. And so the norm means this is what I believe my reality is. Just like I said a few minutes ago, my reality is that I have a brownstone in New York. This is what I believe my reality is. And so what I'm manifesting are replicas of my reality, especially since I'm operating from my core. And that's the essential benefit in tapping into that inner self, because now you're operating. You know, you talk about shopping at farmers markets, that's cultural. It's cultural to go to the grocery store and not buy produce and buy sugar items and processed foods and chips and, you know, microwaved items and have a refrigerator full of pizzas and boxes and, you know, and that's indicative of wealth for them. A full refrigerator, but it's also but it's also
Mm.
indicative of the exact opposite of wealth, which is we didn't have enough.
Um, I remember talking to some young girls about family style dining, and they
Mm-hmm.
said to me, what is that? Most of them
Mm-hmm.
cook by themselves, for themselves, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
for some siblings, but nobody's eating at the table having a conversation. And when I
Mm-hmm.
talked to them about that, I remember one girl specifically saying, well, who wants to sit at the table and eat struggle food?
Mm.
And I'm like, struggle food? Yes. I don't even enjoy the food that I'm making. Why would I want to sit at the table and eat with other people?
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the little things that we don't even think about
Mm-hmm.
when we talk
Mm.
about getting out of another space. So I like the fact that you literally started out showing me this book, your journal with the word manifestation, because if we can teach our kids to dream and show them, be models of what the dream looks like so that this is the reality. I wrote all this stuff down. I have a chest, if you will, in my office of all of my journals, of the things that I wrote down that I can go back and show you. I have made them happen
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like anything that you can dream, you really can make it happen.
Yep.
You can manifest that thing.
That's how you make it happen, by dreaming, because the vision that you create in your mind becomes what we would call real. And then whatever's real is the reality that you have manifested. I find myself, like a lot of people do, getting consumed in the day-to-day. What happens? Where do I have to go? What's on my schedule? What's going on with my car? The car has to go to the shop. Okay, another problem with the car. Oh, somebody needs something. Let me, take this, and so, and I'm thinking, oh, I got this business, I got this meeting, I got this, I got this, these material things, and those material things can overpower and consume me. But what we have to remind ourselves of is there is a greater power within us that's navigating the entire situation, that's determining what experiences we have, what people's past that we cross, what timing we cross them. I don't want to sit in traffic because I have a meeting in 5 minutes, instead of God is protecting me. God has decided that I need to sit here and not go forward. Why do I have all these red lights? I'm trying to go. No, God is saying that the timing has to be this.
I am where I am supposed to be. I am
and that's the shift. And I mean, I felt that in my body. I think you're feeling it in your body right now. You understand? So when we operate from that space, then we come out of this, I always call it, we lose track of time.
Mm-hmm.
Time doesn't exist. And that's what I love about being a teacher, is that when I'm in the classroom, time does not exist. It does not exist.
That's why, Dr. Smith, this is why it's purpose work.
Yeah.
Because you can do it all day long. Oh yeah, you're supposed to get paid for it, but you could do it for free because you love it.
It'll come, but I'm telling you, all the people that judge me by anything material, keep watching. I'm watching too. That's all I can tell you. I'm watching too. It definitely will come. And one of the things that I love about this experience that I've been able to have with you is that your work shows up in the real world. It doesn't, it has, you captivate an audience in a mentoring, coaching, guiding, training kind of space. But what you're doing essentially is you're preparing them to engage with themselves in a way that allows them to operate with confidence in the world, to be unforgiving about how they show up. God does not make mistakes. Why do we think we make mistakes? Why do we say things like that was a mistake? Why do we say that? A mistake. A mistake It's not a mistake. It happened. You made that phone call that you didn't intend to. You engaged with that person. You did whatever it is. Just pay attention to what you did, but don't call it a mistake, because there's really no such thing. There's no such thing as coincidence. There's, some days when I leave my house in the morning, I say, I wonder whose path I'm going to cross today.
Make it intentional. You never know. It has to be intentional. And I'm going to tell you something. I go back to the pandemic because that was a time where grief will shift things for you. Whether you lost a relationship, a relative, a job, a house, grief will shift things for you. Transitions will shift the atmosphere. And when I started and I had the talk show, the Own Your Now show, the one thing about Own Your Now is own and now is the same word. And it's a mindfulness tool to stay in the moment. Like, I don't want me to leave you and we not have an impact where if I see you again, you're like, don't you remember me? No, I absolutely remember you. Because we shifted some things. Like we connected. And oftentimes we go through life, hey, how you doing? For real. And don't really wait for the person to respond. Or you may be the only smile that person sees. And so you can shift the atmosphere, that thing.
Yep. It's hard to see that when you're in the belly of the beast, though.
It is.
It's hard to see that. It's hard to, one of the first things we always tell people to go to is gratitude, right? For any little thing. Gratitude, of course, for being alive, being conscious, right? Thank God for consciousness. Then gratitude for everything that God gives us: food, interactions, shelter. Just the gratitude is like one of the starting spaces that we get to on our way back to really having awareness of our power. It's always that. So, woo, this has been so good.
Yes.
All right, let's check in
Our
before we
cups are
close.
full.
So before we close, let's check in one more time with each other. How you feel?
My cup is full. It's actually overflowing.
I love that.
What about you? How you feel?
I'm grateful for the way God moved through me during this conversation today. I'm grateful for how I let God say what needed to be said to our people so they can see how this idea of self-awareness and identity and agency, how it shows up in the real world. I'm excited for people to see that work manifest across this curriculum so teachers can begin operating from that space. We're at the 5th episode of the first Educate Us podcast.
Yeah.
I have so many more voices to bring out and so many more authentic experiences. I'm so grateful that God used you to shift my flow.
Wow. I thank you for showing up and saying yes to educating us all. We're never too old to learn
Period.
a new thing.
Period. All right, so I want this episode to end with your voice, not mine. So after all these years of doing this work, if you could leave educators, parents, community leaders, all the people's, all the children's lives, the human beings' lives that you've touched with one idea about helping people discover who they are and live with intention, one idea, what would it be?
I would say dig deep. If you're in this field, realize that You are not working with a product. You're working with a person. So take all that you know and find that ancestral joy and let it flow.
I love that. I love that. And that is another Educate Us podcast. Thank you for listening to Educate Us. Educate Us is a podcast and learning collective of TMS Visionary Group. All podcast content is protected by copyright. Copyright 2026 TMS Visionary Group, all rights reserved. New episodes are released every Monday. Thank you for joining the conversation.